Very, very cold for here. But normally, like this morning, you know, 11, 10 degrees, and then a beautiful day, getting around at 18, 20 degrees for the daytime.
Kaya pa yan.
That's no good because have a guess what? We've got a cute little place to stop for morning tea. Lots of lovely non-fattening scones and lamingtons, chocolate cake with cream in the middle. Tremendous. I eat it twice a day, morning and afternoon, and I'm not very wide at all. Anyway, may I welcome you on the little minibus this morning. I trust you don't mind travelling in a small vehicle today, but I'll fill you in a few minutes as to basically what we're doing, just a kind of a format for the morning, if you like. But my first name is Greg, and I'll be with you for the entire morning, right through until we get to the Kookaburra Queen. And then I'll be leaving you after I take you down to pop you on the boat, and you'll be on your own for the next hour and a half while you have your lunch. Again, no calories in your lunchtime food. Okay, how does that sound? And you'll be back on the dry land about, what time is it? 2:15 or something, isn't it? 2:15. It's only an hour and a half cruise, but we won't be down at the boat until around about 12:30, 20 to 1. Right, just in time for you to get your boarding pass and jump on the boat. Now, during the course of our morning's travel, very briefly for you, what we'll be doing this morning, and without it sounding like a history lesson, we don't want that for a Friday morning, do we, just before the weekend starts, but just a quick look around the city. We'll pick the eyes out of a couple of the streets here in town. I'll tell you a few funny stories here and there throughout the morning, but first up with a look around town, then in fact we'll be coming back past this very right-hand side, heading off in the direction of our good governor's house. Alright, he's got a nice little place that I'd love to buy and keep for a weekender. And from there up on top of Mount Cootha, where you just saw the TV towers located, round to the lookout, down to morning tea, and then out to Lone Pine, and back into town along the riverbank. And it's a little tiny little drive that we refer to as Coronation Drive, which takes us back in around right alongside the river on the northern riverbank actually. But on our way into town we'll also be going past the Queensland University, so you'll be able to have a bo peep at that this morning. Okay. The one on this end, if you're able to look right up on top there, you'll see the word in red which says Travel Lodge. Now there's 191 rooms in there. That's the Brisbane City Travel Lodge headquarters building, relocated there to the Transit Centre complex from down in the city a couple of years ago when the Transit Centre was opened. In the centre is a tower which Telecom is looking after, or has completely filled as far as the office space goes. The centre tower is what we call the high-rise office tower. The one at the far end, directly above the coaches, is the low-rise office tower. Now altogether, in those two towers, you'll find, if you get your little ruler out and count them up, there is 28,627 square feet of office space. Now it's not all used at the moment, and in fact even in Brisbane we've got more office space than we're actually needing at the moment. But there we are, that's the story behind the Transit Centre complex. Apart from the fact, you might be interested to know that that's one of the busiest little places in Brisbane. In fact, there is in the area of 250 coach movements in and out of the Brisbane Transit Centre. That's just coaches alone, day tour coaches coming and going, long distance express coaches, intrastate coaches coming and going every day, right? Every day during the holiday times of, for instance, Christmas, 6 weeks over Christmas, long weekends, school holidays, and of course Easter time. So it's a pretty busy little place. Down there on our left-hand side also, you might be able to just catch a glimpse of an electric trinket. First up though, see this little building just in front of us here? This is what we call the Tower Mill, or the old windmill, just on the right here. It's had a few $100,000 spent on it quite recently to have it upgraded. It's a building which has been classified by the National Trust, built many years ago of course, and built originally to have a treadmill included in it to grind wheat and maize. However, would you believe, the treadmill never ever worked, so the little tower mill was never used for the purpose for which it was built. One thing though that it was used for, and keep this in mind if you will, because I'll be pointing out our TV towers up on Mount Cootha and telling you a little story about them when we arrive up on the mountain. But the tower mill was actually used for many things, one of which was Brisbane's experimental first television transmissions, right? experimental television transmissions in Australia. We have legislation, and in fact every state barring Victoria has legislation safeguarding the money invested from fraudulent activity by its owners or whoever, but safeguarding the money invested by investors into building societies. We haven't had any of the similar problems to what Victoria has had up here at all, thank goodness. Just in front of us, folks, that's about the extent travelling northwards as the city goes, the inner city, which is about 1.5 miles long and about 1 mile wide. Overhanging the church, from the church I should say, where the trees are, overhanging towards the footpath. On our right there used to be a little veranda where a certain speech was read from. Some of the contents of that speech actually make up Queensland's constitution. That is, Queensland as a state, separated as it has been from New South Wales since 1859. We're only 131 years old here in Queensland, so we're pretty young by standards elsewhere, I guess. Together with the square building in front of us here beyond the clock tower, which is the Railway Administration Headquarters building, two of the little buildings there built directly above the Central Railway Station complex, which is in this block to our right and just 2 stories down below the roadway. Now the entrance to Central Station is up here on our right hand side. You'll see the word Central Station just above the pedestrian lights, and you can also see a clock tower here on our right. Now this small section just here where the pedestrian lights are, that is where the entrance to Central Station is a 1901 model section of building, which has had to have been, according to Queensland National Trust legislation, included in the overall new complex that we now call the new Central Station. Now right opposite on our left hand side is the Shrine of Remembrance. That's situated there in the centre of 18 fluted columns with a few flowers down at the bottom. Never ever does one come down here but red roof. Can you see that one there? That's built in 1842. Of course that's been classified also by the National Trust for preservation. But the reason I pointed that out to you is because not only is it Brisbane's General Post Office, has been that way since 1842, but it was built originally on the site of our former and only, at that time, women's prison. Women's prison, right? Was to have been built. That's been squashed now, and it will not be built there. Reason being, of course, that Brisbane's just not quite ready for that sort of progress. We're kind of on the world map and have been that way since, well, I dare say 1982, when our 12th Commonwealth Games was held here in Brisbane, and then of course especially more recently with World Expo 88 in Brisbane, which you've all heard about, I guess, here on the right. Also through the intersection here on our left hand side, and you may recall just a few moments ago I mentioned the Medway Centre and Metropolitan Permanent Building Society. I did that for a very good reason, because just past the entrance to the mall, through the lights on the left, can you see this tall building here? Yeah. This one just here on our left hand side. This is an 1849 model building. It's been here since 1849, called MacArthur Chambers, as you can see on the sign here. Its address is 201 Edward Street, Brisbane City. Now in that building, in fact room 802, during the Second World War, is where a gentleman called General Douglas MacArthur, I'm sure you've heard of him, commanded the Second World War fleet of American servicemen that were based here and operating throughout the South Pacific. Now, as we make this a little section of town where there's not a great deal in the way of classified by the National Trust buildings, or buildings that have been classified, I'm sorry if you have to kind of turn your head around a little bit and look out through the back window. The back window is not tinted, but if you're able to look right out through the back window, have a look downstream, no, not up the street, downstream, right behind us, and you'll see the Story Bridge down there. Can you see that one down there? Just a single span of it. That highway, or roadway that you see up there, is 1.4 kilometres long. It's called the Bradfield Highway, and it's Queensland's shortest highway. Now where you see the Story Bridge there, that highest point on the bridge is at 100 metres above the sea level. That particular bridge opened in 1940, named after Mr. J.D. Story, who at that time, style of architecture there, and taking 3 years and a month to build. It was opened in fact on August 4, but 31 years before the Queen Mother was born, 1869, and building was built. And that's simply our former Parliament House. Now you may see a tall building behind it. Can you see that one there, right behind it? You can just see the top couple of floors there, but the entrance into our current and new $20 million Parliament House is over there to our left through the double green gates. All the politicians have their offices here in William Street, and just up here to our right hand side you may be able to see about 200 yards to our right, to our front right, there's a little truck with yellow on the bottom, blue stripe, white on the top. Can you see it up here on our right? Now it looks like it's coming out of the driveway, and anyway the building that's built above it with the 5 vertical columns here is the building that we call the Executive Building. It's built in 1981, or at least opened in that year, and that's where the politicians have their offices. It is not where Parliament meets. Now we might be able to give somebody a bit of a thrill. I've got to look unhappy all the time, and that's no good to me either, you see. But anyway, they look after things like the Executive Building, and also this one on their left, which you'll see on the sign dates back to 1829. But the 1829 for the old Government Stores Building, or Commissariat Stores Building, actually refers to the bottom section. Now, for those of you going on the boat, you will see that building is 2 stories high. We're actually looking at the top story, which was added on later in the year 1910. That was just before I was born, okay? So, there we are. I am older than I look, but I use palm olive, so that was to the side. The high that Expo created, if I'm allowed to say that way, has been a little bit lost, I think, now. I was supposed to get on and do something side with the, you see the little tiny tower that's sticking over the top of it there, right off in the distance? That's one of our laser beam towers that used to be operative during Expo. Again, you'll see that from the boat later on in the day. Now, if you look to our right, that's Queen Victoria looking at us there, or at least a statue of her anyway. She's sitting in her park and in front of the Lands Department building. A couple of old government buildings in this area of town, turning left into George Street, of course, which is in fact located directly in front of us. Now, from where you're sitting, I trust that you will be able to see right along this road. Can you see up on top of the hill, just before the hill drops off to the left, there looks like a couple of red-roofed buildings? Can you see those? Okay, 708 feet up they are. And that's the section of that little mountain in front of us, which is the section called Mount Cootha. The whole of that little piece of greenery in front up there where the trees are is the Taylor Range. But Mount Cootha is the left-hand end. That's where the lookout is, and that's where we're going to be just before morning tea. And we should be up there in about 20 minutes altogether. Now this is Milton here that we're making our way into. Have you heard of Alan Bond? Have you? He used to own this little set of chimneys and buildings up here in front of us. It's called the Castlemaine Perkins Brewery, but Bond Brewing's sign a couple of weeks ago came down. As I came along here one day, I noticed the sign had come down, so I dare say that Mr. Bond doesn't own it anymore. But that's one of our 2 most major, we've got a few breweries in Queensland, but this is one of the 2 big ones. The other one is actually the Carlton Unite. Federal government and state government politics, terms of 3 years, where we elect our government for. Voting is compulsory, okay, in both federal and also state and also local government elections as well. But here in Brisbane, we elect our local government for periods of 2 years only. Now in federal and state government spheres, we have a couple of major basic parties. The Socialists, if I'm allowed to use that term, being the Australian Labor Party, they're in power in both Canberra, having been so for 7 years under Mr Hawke's leadership, and this year they've obtained power in Queensland under Queensland's youngest governor's leadership. At 39, Mr Wayne Goss is head of the Australian Labor Party. They're responsible, him and his group of helpers, to look after the day-to-day running of Queensland. In Brisbane, Brisbane is a very, very large city, largest city in Australia, in fact the only city in Australia to have the city and the metropolitan area, all 400 square miles of it, governed by one municipal body, which is, as we call it, the Brisbane City Council. There are 27 in the council. They're led by a lady. She's currently in the end of her second term, that is, she's in her 4th year, and she's up for re-election next April. And the political party that we have vying for power every year, or every 2 years, in Brisbane is only two, the Australian Labor Party and the Liberal Party. And as of 3.5 years ago, the Liberal Party under Sally Ann Atkinson obtained power and has been that way for now currently their second term. They make it in again next April. We'll see what happens. Okay, now having mentioned that to you, from where you come from in your part of the world, you may have things a little bit different, but basically we vote here for the party, not Canberra. Now, if there's a problem relating to a Commonwealth matter in Queensland, the Governor of Queensland will get in touch with the Governor-General in Canberra. If he can't sort it out, he gets on his hot little telephone and rings International ISD to Queen Elizabeth in England, and they have a chat about the problem, and then it gets sorted out from there. Okay, now as it happens, the Governor-General in Canberra, who's the head governor if you like, is a Brisbane lad. He comes from Ipswich, formerly belonging to the Australian Labor Party and a deputy opposition leader as such. However, him along with the Governor of Queensland, who lives in this little home on our left-hand side, it's beautiful, isn't it? This is the one I'd like for a weekender. But anyway, the governor of each of our states, including Governor Sir Walter Campbell, has been living in this little White House, we've got our own White House here, for 5 years, is a non-biased person. All of our governors are non-biased people, politically on the planet Earth that is, and in fact, to my knowledge, some of you are older than I, correct me if I'm wrong, but only once have I found in our history books that the governor, in fact it was the Governor-General in 1975, interfere with the day-to-day running of the government. At that time it was the federal government whom he sacked. Anyway, this is the suburb of Barton. That's it for the political. Less would be left untouched. The little white ant creature doesn't like tin, so I wouldn't kind of jump up over the top of the tin and start eating away the wooden foundations to the home itself. Now, more recently, of course, homes have been replaced, at least the wooden stumps anyway, have been replaced with reinforced concrete stumps, and in fact, some homes built on an older style or built up high-set homes we call those, not two-storey homes, high-set, H-I-S-E-T, or H-I-G-H-S-E-T. Homes that are built up high, sometimes built to start with even on reinforced concrete. Broadcasting Commission, and they don't have their studios up here on the mountain. They only have their transmitter station, and for that reason I dare say we'll probably only find about 5 or 6 cars here. That's just a skeleton staff here to make sure that the transmitter works okay. On our way into town, after we leave the Queensland University and head in through Toowong, I'll point out for you where the ABC, in fact you'll be able to see it, it'll be right alongside of us, and of course I'm referring to the ABC studios with their small transmitter there, which beams transmissions up here to the mountain, to the large transmitter, and then in turn this one beams them right across Queensland, direct or via relay stations. Now, our 3 commercial channels, which we have here in Brisbane, we also have the SBS broadcasting on channel 26, but that's only being able to be picked up if you've got UHF on your television, which not everybody has. They only account for about 2% of our viewing population anyway, but apart from that, our other normal 3 commercial channels, that is 10, 7 and 9, have not only their studios but also their transmitter station. They have the whole box and dice located up here on the mountain, and for that reason you'll see 20 or 30 cars, I dare say, at each of the 3 television stations. The The first one that we'll be coming across is Channel 10, just up here on the right, and at the little top of the crest in the road, directly past that is as high as we'll be getting this morning as we make our way around this little drive. Now this area of land here, which is owned and operated by the Brisbane City Council, it's National Park, Flora and Fauna Sanctuary. That is, wildlife and birds are protected here, and is actually called the Brisbane Forest Park, and totals quite a few hundred hectares in area, and in fact is part of a little tiny spur line, just a small section of Taylor Range, 8 miles long, 4 miles wide, and it's a little spur line from the Great Dividing Range, which you'll be able